The March of the Volunteers is the national anthem of the People's Republic of China. Unlike most previous Chinese state anthems, it is written entirely in the vernacular, rather than in classical Chinese. Composed during the Japanese invasion of China, its lyrics were written as a dramatic poem by the poet and playwright Tianhe in 1934 and set to music by Nie from Yunnan province the next year for the film Children of Troubled Times. It was adopted as the PRC's provisional anthem in 1949 in place of the Three Principles of the People of the Republic of China and the Communist Internationale. When Tianhe was imprisoned during the Cultural Revolution in the 1960s, the song was briefly and unofficially replaced by The East is Red, reinstated but played without words, then played with altered words, restored to its original version. The March of the Volunteers was raised to official status in 1982, adopted by Hong Kong and Macau upon their transfer to China in 1997 and 1999, respectively, and included in the Chinese Constitution's Article 136 in 2004. The lyrics of the March of the Volunteers, also formerly known as the National Anthem of the People's Republic of China, were composed by Tianhe in 1934 as two stanzas in his poem, The Great Wall, to music. In May, Dianthong's sound director He Luting had the Russian composer Aronov Shalomov arrange their orchestral accompaniment. The song was performed by Jiu Menghe and Yuan Muji, along with a small and hastily assembled chorus. He Luting consciously chose to use their first take, which preserved the Cantonese accent of several of the men. On the 9th of May, Ji Yuan recorded it in Mo Standard Mandarin for Pathé Orient's Shanghai branch ahead of the movie's release, so that it served as a form of advertising for the film. Originally translated as Volunteers Marching On, the English name references the several volunteer armies that opposed Japan's invasion of Manchuria. In the 1930s, the Chinese name is a poetic variation, literally, the righteous and brave army, that also appears in other songs of the time, such as the 1937 Sword March. In May 1935, the same month as the movie's release, Lu Ji and other leftists in Shanghai had begun an amateur choir and started promoting a national salvation singing campaign, supporting mass singing associations along the lines established the year before by Liu Lingamo, a Shanghai YMCA leader. Although the movie did not perform well enough to keep Diatong from closing, its theme song became wildly popular. Musicologist Feng Zikai reported hearing it being sung by crowds in rural villages from Zhejiang to Hunan within months of its release and, at a performance at a Shanghai sports stadium in June 1936, Liu's chorus of hundreds was joined by its audience of thousands. Although Tianhe was imprisoned for 2 years, Nie fled toward the Soviet Union only to die en route in Japan, and Liu Lingamo eventually fled to the US to escape harassment from the nationalists. The singing campaign continued to expand, particularly after the December 1936 Xi'an incident reduced nationalist pressure against leftist movements. Visiting St. Paul's Hospital at the Anglican Mission at Guide, W. H. Auden and Christopher Isherwood reported hearing a Chi Lai treated as a hymn at the mission service and the same tune, set to different words, treated as a favorite song of the 8th Route Army. The Pathé recording of the march appeared prominently in Joris Ivanza's 1939 The 400 Million, an English-language documentary on the war in China. The same year, Li Pao Chen included it with a parallel English translation in a songbook published in the new Chinese capital Chongqing. This version would later be disseminated throughout the United States for children's musical education during World War II before being curtailed at the onset of the Cold War. The New York Times published the song's sheet music on the 24th of December, along with an analysis by a Chinese correspondent in Chongqing. In exile in New York City in 1940, Liu Lingamo taught it to Paul Robeson, the college-educated polyglot folk-singing son of a runaway slave. Robeson began performing the song in Chinese at a large concert in New York City's Lewisohn Stadium. reportedly in communication with the original lyricist Ian Ha. The pair translated it into English and recorded it in both languages as Chi Lai for Keynote Records in early 1941. Its 3-disc album included a booklet whose preface was written by Sung Ching Ling, widow of Sun Yat-sen, and its initial proceeds were donated to the Chinese resistance. Robison gave further live performances at benefits for the China Aid Council and United China Relief, although he gave the stage to Liu and the Chinese themselves for the song's performance at their sold-out concert at Washington's Uline Arena on 24 April 1941. Following the attack on Pearl Harbor and beginning of the Pacific War, the march was played locally in I.